Elon Musk moments ago in a major and confusing backtrack, now saying federal employees may get a second chance to respond to his email demanding to know weekly accomplishments or lose their job. The deadline from the email that he sent over the weekend was midnight tonight. Now Musk is saying, quote, subject to the discretion of the president, they will be given another chance. Failure to respond a second time will result in termination. This is very confusing because, many of the agencies run by Trump's appointees were basically saying, don't reply to the email. And this new kind of, okay, you get a second chance and then you're fired, came just a few hours after President Trump had warned that anyone who didn't reply to the first email would be punished. He had praised Musk's ultimatum as a, quote, ingenious idea.
If you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea.
Katie Drummond is out front, global editorial director at Wired. She and her team, as anyone who watches the show knows, have been breaking so much news on Musk and Doge and what's going on. So now it's even more uncertain because it was, respond or else. And then, Trump's own appointed secretaries were basically like, don't respond. Now Musk saying, we get a second chance or else.
Or else something.
Right. So what is all this?
I feel like I have been saying the word chaos on your show a lot for the last month, and it's because it continues to be just this erratic, irrational, baffling chaos playing out across the federal government, and this is just another example. I'm confused. I don't know what will happen to these federal employees if they don't send 5 bullet points of their accomplishments last week to an email address ostensibly controlled by an unelected billionaire.
Right.
It's chaos.
It is absolutely bizarre. I mean, Musk actually then called the email, Katie, a very basic pulse check.
Sure.
And that was, the word there appears to have been carefully chosen.
Right.
The suggestion is that dead people are on the government payroll and that somehow there's some sort of fraud going on, that you say you're working or else. And then Trump actually brought it up this afternoon, this whole idea. Here's what he said.
A lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
Where does this idea come from?
So this is not the first time in recent weeks that Musk and Trump have brought up the notion of dead people, people who don't exist. Previously it was Musk commenting on 150-year-olds collecting Social Security benefits. So much of this, I believe, is designed to cater to a conspiratorial part of their base, right? It's the online fans, it's the followers who are attracted to this notion that, dead people are collecting millions of dollars in federal funds or in federal salaries.
Or voting in Georgia.
They're everywhere and they're all dead and they are taking money from tax-paying Americans who really like to believe in things that aren't true. And I think that this is another example of Musk and Trump playing exactly into that audience, exactly into that base.
Back to the famous movie, I See Dead People, right? Okay, Musk's moves are causing a lot of backlash. I mean, the TVs at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. I mean, this was kind of amazing. I don't know what it was, like an AI-generated video.
AI-generated video.
It was Trump, and he's kissing Musk's feet. The words "Long live the king" are on the screen. And then they had to literally, I guess, manually turn the TV off.
They had to unplug all of the TVs.
What do you know about this?
We don't know who's behind it. We don't know how it came to be that this, to be clear, very stressful to watch video was being played all across the TVs in this department. But what it signals, right, is that you have a federal workforce that is fed up. They have been plunged into chaos. They don't know if they have job security. They don't even know who they answer to. And it appears as though at least some of them are making their displeasure known, from what we can tell with a very provocative video that somehow ended up on a lot of TVs in at least one federal agency today.
Provocative may be the word choice of the day. I don't know where to laugh or be absolutely disgusted.
I can't in good faith tell people to watch the video. It's quite something.
All right, thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you.
Out front now, Letitia Thompson. She's a clinical social worker at the Veterans Affairs Department. And Letitia, I really appreciate your speaking because I know it doesn't come without real risk at this time, but you're choosing to speak out. and put a face on this for so many in America. Can I just start with, you were instructed, I know, by your department to reply to that email, which basically said, hey, tell us what you did last week, justify the existence of your job. And we're here up against the deadline for that reply. Have you finished your reply, and what did you say?
I have not finished my reply as of yet. However, I plan on just emphasizing the fact that I have, supported my performance standards and, applied the what is expected of me in my job description.
So when we talk about DOJ and the impact, what was your reaction over the weekend when you get this email?
Astonishment. I did not expect to be receiving an email, right? On Saturday, I'm not employed. My tour of duty is not at that time. And of course, I did not check my email to know, but, I did find out through my colleagues and through the news circuit that it was there waiting for me on Monday to respond to by the end of today. Once I saw the content of that email, I found it to be very disrespectful and insulting. The federal workforce goes to work every single day and provide critical services to working families, veterans, seniors, students every single day. We have to actually complete performance standards about every 6 months that accounts for our necessary duties in the federal government. So, it was just clear to me that the email was, yet another scare tactic meant to humiliate, dehumanize, demoralize the federal workforce. And in fact, we want to go to work every day. We, are accountable to the American public and not to a billionaire.
So President Trump praised the idea from Elon Musk, right? This idea to send the emails. Here's what he said.
What he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired.
And now, we did then learn that agencies were saying, well, that's voluntary for you to respond to the actual email itself. But then President Trump also posted a meme which was mocking. It showed a character of SpongeBob SquarePants. And the list of tasks under SpongeBob was, quote, cried about Trump, cried about Elon, made it into the office for once, read some emails, cried about Trump and Elon some more. How do you respond to those, the meme, the statement that's coming from the President of the United States?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate and demoralizing to hear that exactly, because I know how hard me and my colleagues work every single day to make sure that the America is running. Essentially, we make sure that mail gets processed and delivery, veterans get the care that they need, protect air and water from corporate pollution. And as far as the crying noted in the meme, this is causing a lot of emotional distress. I talk to colleagues every single day that are feeling tormented, terrorized by the incessant attacks by DOJ and Elon Musk.
So we have seen some government workers, when you're actually out here, Tisha, putting your name on it, your face out there. Some people have started to speak out. There were TVs at the Department of Housing and Urban Development at HUD that shows a fake video of Trump. Obviously, this was fake, but it had been somehow, someone had been able to mess with the televisions at HUD. And the image was a video of Trump kissing Musk's feet, the words, "Long live the real king," on the screen. Over the weekend, the American flag was upside down at Yosemite National Park, which would signal a distress call. What are you hearing from your colleagues about people speaking out?
I think, everybody does have a good understanding of how demoralizing, stressful, intimidating, humiliating all of this is. And luckily, there are folks like myself who understand what is truly at risk here. We're talking about essential and vital services being entirely removed, depleted if Elon Musk is successful.
Well, Letitia, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time and being willing to speak out tonight. Thank you.
Family to deal with alone because I feel like we kind of became public enemy number one overnight.
For nearly a week, Republicans
And tonight, the White House says Elon Musk will be there. And when the president was asked today if millions of federal workers need to answer that email listing 5 things you've done at work in the last week, President Trump signaling today it's voluntary, but if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. Mary Bruce at the White House tonight.
Tonight, the White House announcing that Elon Musk will be there tomorrow when President Trump holds his first cabinet meeting. Musk sitting at the table with some of the secretaries he took by surprise, issuing that directive to more than 2 million federal workers to explain what they did last week in an email or lose their jobs. Some of those secretaries pushing back, telling their workers not to respond or that it was voluntary. Tonight, Trump sending mixed messages.
Well, it's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer, I guess you get fired.
In the Oval Office, the president asked if Musk speaks for him.
Is he speaking for you when he says you'll be terminated?
Yeah, everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility. You know the old statement, the buck stops here, right?
The White House says more than 1 million federal workers have responded to the email, but Gregory Bell, a Navy veteran who works as a medical records specialist at the Department of Defense, is not one of them. His agency told workers to hold off.
A lot of people they're scared because they don't know what could come next.
Many workers reluctant to speak on camera for fear of losing their jobs.
It's just a lot for me and my family to deal with alone because I feel like we kind of became public enemy number 1 overnight.
For nearly a week, Republican members of Congress have been getting pushback from their constituents. In Georgia, Republican Rich McCormick getting an earful.
Because we are all freaking pissed off about this. You're going to hear it and feel it.
Today, that Republican congressman speaking with ABC's Rachel Scott.
People are concerned about what the DOJ really is, what it can do, what its powers are. I think some of their actions have been too rapid to adapt to for real people. I mean, you're talking about Republicans, not just Democrats.
And tonight, more than 21 computer engineers and project managers who worked with DOJ resigning in protest. They had worked for the U.S. Digital Service, which DOJ replaced. In a letter saying, we will not use our skills as technologists to jeopardize Americans' sensitive data or dismantle critical public services. We will not lend our expertise to carry out or legitimize DOJ's actions. And tonight, the president making news on another front, announcing a new version of the green card, saying the U.S. will sell gold cards for $5 million to wealthy foreigners who want to live here. He says the immigration program, which he says he may call the Trump gold card, will be a, quote, very strong path to citizenship. And while he hasn't yet released the details, he says the program will likely start in roughly 2 weeks, and he estimates the U.S. could sell more than 1 million of these gold cards. David.
Mary Bruce live at the White House.
One last warning from Elon Musk, quote, the standard for passing the test was to type some words and press send. Yet so many failed. Subject to the discretion of the president, they will be given another chance. Failure to respond a second time will result in termination. Bureaucrats in Washington are getting a second chance. If you haven't told DOJ what you did last week, you have until tonight.
It's somewhat voluntary, but it's also if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. What it really is do people exist? We have this massive government with millions of people, and nobody knows who's working for the government, who's not. So what they're doing is they're sending out a letter to everybody, and they're saying, what were the things you did last week? I guess they ask for 5. And if people are working, it's easy. I could tell you 5 things I did last week. I could tell you 5 things I did 6 weeks ago, right?
1 million workers sent in their bullet points. That's about half the federal government. So 1 million employees blew off Musk. It's been 72 hours for something that takes 5 minutes.
I could name 5 things, 5 bullets, in about 5 minutes of me coming into the office every day. If you struggle to do that for a week, there's no excuse for that. Now, you can have an extra day to answer it, but you better be able to answer it.
I gave the primetime staff 18 hours for their 5 bullets, and they all met the deadline. Here are some of my staff's accomplishments. Unjammed the printer after Johnny clogged it printing headshots. Transcribed 3 hours of Monica Lewinsky's podcast. Watched 4 hours of Iraqi Sesame Street. Got yelled at on the phone by James Carville. Booked America's heartthrob, Stephen Miller. Called 12 farmers who killed their chickens because Biden told them to. Skipped lunch 5 days in a row producing the monologue. Maha. It's demanding work at prime time, so after careful review, no one's getting doged. Although Johnny's 5 bullets were troubling, and I'll share those in the window. People are taking the bullet points seriously. The commissioner of the FCC said, "I'll show you what I did last week. Watch."
All right, made it to the top with Hassan and his crew. They're swapping out the lighting system up here. Wonderful day with them. America's tower crews get the toughest jobs done. Super grateful for their work.
Yeah, you have to be great. Maybe you didn't climb a power line or ice some illegals, but you've got to send your boss something. If you don't respond, it means you did nothing. Or as Trump says, maybe you don't exist. Here's what one former federal worker says is an average day in the office.
80% of the work in government is done by 20% of the people. Our government is filled with the most incompetent and most lazy people and an occasional hard worker. And those hard workers are severely punished every time they outwork their colleagues. I use the word work very loosely. One employee spent his time remote working, running his own farm. One employee would come into the office, his start time would be 6:30, and he knew nobody would be there. And when I came in at 7:30 and I was the next person to come in, he was snoring at his desk every single morning. Another employee would take the government truck on an almost daily basis so that he could go out to lunch and then go and take a nap in his favorite park under a shady tree in the government truck.
And those people, they showed up at the office. Last week at the Small Business Administration, 80% of the workers were still working from home. Over the weekend, that flipped.
On Friday, it was like there were tumbleweeds blowing through the office. There were still tags left on desk chairs. And it was my first full day at the agency, and I was so excited to be able to meet people. And to not find anyone there was disappointing. To have 80% of the people back yesterday was amazing, to be able to shake hands. And what's happening is Americans are seeing that they have been paying for empty office buildings, for do-nothing bureaucrats. That ends now.
All they had to do was ask the bureaucrats to come back. It was so easy, even Biden could do it, but he didn't. Biden actually fired people who wanted to come into the office, the ones who wouldn't get vaxxed. For 4 years, Joe never tried to save the taxpayers' money. The CEO of JP Morgan says it's common sense.
The government's inefficient, not very competent, and it needs a lot of work. And so you and I, it's not just waste and fraud, it's outcomes. Why are we spending the money on these things? Are we getting what we deserve? What should we change? So I think doing that needs to be done. You have to understand that whenever you go to any big institution or the government, the bureaucracy pushes back on everything. And they will hear every little thing they're going to push back on. So you have to be strong if you're going to do it. It's not just about the
Well, if you work from home, listen up. President Trump putting an end to federal employees working remotely. One of his first executive actions, directing agencies to order workers back to the office full time. Several big name companies, Amazon, JP Morgan, they've already gone back to requiring employees in the office 5 days a week. Alina Shirazi joining us now from Washington with more on this. How many people are we talking about? How much of the federal workforce does this impact, Alina?
Marnie, good morning to you. Yeah, I mean, half of federal workers will now have to go to work in person, 50%. So that is a pretty large number. We know that the work from home culture, right? We all remember this started during the pandemic, and some of those habits really did stick. So we're actually in front of one of those buildings, the Department of Energy. You can see it behind me here. There are a lot of windows. It is a very large building. And you know what? A lot of these windows have desks. And guess what? Less than 1% of them are being used. Less than 1% of this building space is being used. And that's the information we found on the Public Buildings Reform Board. But now on top of all of this, Trump says he wants to sell unused federal buildings, and there are quite a lot of them. Research shows there are nearly 8,000 empty buildings that cost taxpayers about $8 billion a year to maintain. That's on top of another $7.7, almost $8 billion spent in energy bills to keep them running. And a 2023 GAO report said that 17% of the 24 federal agencies are using as little as 9% of them, and only as much as 49% of their buildings' capacity. So we know at the end of the day, right, President Trump, he is trying to fill up these buildings, and he's saying the rest of them that aren't being used, let's get rid of them.
Any pushback from the unions on all this?
Yeah, of course, several unions are pushing back on this. Marnie, we did reach out to some of them. Some of these unions we did reach out to that represents federal workers here in Washington, D.C.
Federal workers are in limbo as agencies give contradictory guidance on Elon Musk's ultimatum to prove their work or be fired.
And for those already fired, New York State is offering a hand up. Jessica Moore has been speaking with fired federal employees and joins us now with more on where things stand right now. Jess.
Well, Christine and Chris, I spoke with a Long Island woman who has worked for the Social Security Administration for 2 decades. She describes the last few weeks as mental torture, conflicting messages, no job security, and life-changing policy guidance being posted on social media. She didn't feel comfortable sharing her story on camera, saying she's afraid for her job. But today, some people who have already been fired rallied together to figure out what's next as the White House struggles to provide clarity.
From the White House to the State House, everyone seems to have a message for federal workers on the heels of Elon Musk's email asking for 5 things they accomplished last week or they'd be fired.
This is to ensure that federal workers are not ripping off American taxpayers, that they are showing up to the office, and that they are doing their job.
The federal government might say you're fired, but here in New York, we say you're hired.
Governor Hochul encouraging any of the thousands of already fired federal employees to come work for New York State. Many were terminated before Musk's email even went out because they were considered unnecessary.
We love federal workers. Whatever your skills, we value public service.
The White House saying Tuesday each agency head is ultimately responsible for hirings and firings, leading to conflicting emails like these sent to a Social Security Administration employee, first directing her to respond to Musk's email and then another email telling her not to.
The president, again, has entrusted his cabinet secretaries to oversee their workforce. That's why he nominated them to be cabinet secretaries. And so federal workers can be directed to their agency leadership.
As dozens of fired federal workers descended on the Capitol, pleading their case to lawmakers, others gathered on a Zoom led by Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna.
They're speaking not just for themselves, they're speaking for thousands and thousands of federal workers who have been unfairly and unjustly fired.
I had no idea that without due process that I could just be terminated out of the blue.
How do we pay? How can I take my kids to the emergency room if something happens?
Several begging the man they voted for to give them their jobs back.
I would just ask President Trump and anybody else that might be in charge to reconsider your decision. I don't think it was effective in anything you stated as your goal.
And President Trump, as you know, has so far applauded Musk's efforts to whittle down the federal workforce, even encouraging him to be more aggressive. The White House today also confirmed Elon Musk will attend President Trump's first official cabinet meeting tomorrow, even though he's definitely not a cabinet member, rather a special government employee. Chris and Christine?
Jessica, thank you. A lot to work out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. Virginia's governor also trying to recruit federal workers who've been fired. The state launched a website called VirginiaHasJobs.com. It offers free job support and resume review, plus links to openings. Virginia's governor said it's intended to be a resource for employees who were part of the cuts, but he has drawn some criticism for still expressing support for those DOGE cuts.
And consumer confidence has dropped 7%. That's the biggest decrease in 3.5 years. The new data shows shoppers are growing more concerned about tariffs and inflation. This measurement important because consumers typically make financial decisions based on how they feel about the economy. There was mixed reaction on Wall Street. The Dow was up 159 points. The broader markets fell with the S&P losing 28 and the Nasdaq dropping 260 points. Of course, we'll continue to follow the policy changes from President Trump's first 100 days in office and beyond. You can find continuing coverage on our website, cbsnewyork.com.
Turn now to Trump's clash with Democratic governors. Joining us now from Albany, New York, is the governor, Kathy Hochul. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning.
I know you were just here in Washington and you met privately with President Trump. In the past, you've said the relationship doesn't have to be adversarial. Was your meeting with him adversarial, and what was your top message?
It wasn't an adversarial meeting, but I was very clear, especially after I found that the Trump administration had ended a program that was put in place, congestion pricing, by the duly elected members of our legislature representing the voice of the people. And with a